Today we're going to talk about one of the most exciting topics for me. This is a topic that people find easy to talk about because this is one of the only topics that really translates to what we are doing. We know that if our goal is the ICAO test, an interview, or whatever, sometimes we have some problems because they ask some things that they are related to aviation, they are related to some things we do, but they're not absolutely what we actually do in the cockpit, right? So when we talk about procedures, we are talking about the most important part for us, which is the operation. As pilots, we are not hired, we're not paid to know everything, to read everything, to explain everything. And this is the biggest gap most pilots have. They know how to do, but they don't know how to talk about it. So procedures are something that really resonate with all of us. We know the procedures. We know that our profession is not technical, in my opinion. I don't feel the pilots are technical. I feel pilots are operational because we need to perform the tasks. We need to have a muscle memory. We need to have an assertiveness in the procedures. And I'm not only talking about problems, I'm talking about normal routines as well. So I really like this topic. I was very excited for this class because I feel that when we know how to talk about procedures, we actually know how to organize our thoughts. We know how to show a sequence of events to the examiners. So this helps a lot because I feel that I'm gonna create a statistic here. I feel that 80 to 85% of the questions they can ask you, you can find a way, and you're able to find a way to use this in an operational side. So if you know a lot about procedures, about your responsibilities, about things you need to do, you can find your way through the answer, because it's basically us talking about some things we do, not some things we read or some things we have studied. Procedures are things we do. So today we're going to talk about checklists, SOPs, normal and abnormal checklists, the QRH, standard procedures, and then I'm going to make a breakdown about on various situations with you guys. All right, so let's do it. Let's start with the definition of checklists. So you know me, I always love to start with definitions because if I can define something, I understand that. And if I understand that, I can talk about it. So everything is related, as I always show you guys. So starting with the checklist here, we can say that checklists are an essential part of aviation safety and efficiency. Yeah, doesn't matter. Because they help ensure that pilots perform all required actions correctly and in order without relying on their memory alone. Checklists are very important because they help pilots change the aircraft's configuration during normal and abnormal scenarios. All right, beautiful text, whatever, what do I need to know? So let's imagine you're in your test and something, and they ask you, hey, what are checklists, or what is the importance of checklists? You can say, well, checklists are very important for flight safety and efficiency. They help us perform some actions without relying on our memory, you can say. We normally use checklists to change the aircraft's configuration, and we use them during the entire flight in both normal and abnormal scenarios. That's it. All right? That's it for checklists, guys. So list of steps, we don't have to rely on our memory, and they also help us with normal and abnormal scenarios. If you want to forget everything, I would please ask you to remember that we use the checklist to change the aircraft's configuration. Regardless if you're flying an airplane or a helicopter, checklists are the same thing for everyone. All right? That being said, we have two types of checklists. We have the normal checklist for normal routines, when we don't have a problem, when everything's safe, everything's going smoothly, which, let's be honest, translates to 99.9% of the flights. We rarely have problems in airplanes, but we always need to make some adjustments, right? So a normal checklist, they are used before every critical phase of a normal flight in order to change the airplane's configuration. We have the before start checklist, the after start check. We have the before start checklist, the start checklist, the after start checklist. We have our before takeoff checklist, after takeoff checklist. We have our climb checklist. Every time we need to change the aircraft's configuration, we have a checklist for that. All right. We have the philosophies, right? We have the do and read and do. Basically, we are gonna put the read and do before the airplane starts or when we are on the ground, and we're gonna have the do and read when we are flying, especially when we have two pilots, right? Let's imagine now something bad happens, something goes wrong in the flight, which means that we are gonna use a non-normal checklist. Basically, non-normal checklists are used to assist pilots during emergency or abnormal situations. They will provide aircrew with the necessary steps to troubleshoot the current issue. And this is something I want to stop right here and tell you guys something. I normally try to give a wide range of vocabulary. I try to change the words all the time because I want to give you more input, okay? So troubleshoot is basically the same thing as solve. An issue is the same thing as problem. So today, if you're a level 4, if you have a level 4 and you aim to get a level 5, you need to start incorporating better vocabulary in what you're saying. This is subtle. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to force it and use a perfect vocabulary every time or every single sentence, but you need to have a wide range of words to use, okay? That's why, for example, I didn't use pilots. I used air crew, which basically it's the same thing, but of course we can always include the flight attendants on that. And I use a troubleshoot and not solve. All right, so if you have a very basic English and you just want the ICAO 4, you just want to learn the basic steps in order to get your ICAO, use simple words. There's no need to create anything. All right, if you have the simplicity, the simple part of the language and aviation well established, you will get your ICAO. If you already have a 4, if you already have an intermediate English, or if you just need a higher score, very important for you to start implementing things. All right. So guys, now we just talked about the checklists, the normal and abnormal ones. And this is it. The normal checklists are used before every stage of the flight, and they help us change the aircraft's configuration. On the other hand, the non-normal checklists are used to assist us during emergency situations because they will provide the steps for us to solve the problem. All right? Good? Easy? Hard? Send me a go ahead, guys, just so I know you guys are following everything I'm saying. You can send it in the chat.
Go ahead, man.
Beautiful, Daniel. Thank you. Let's go. Now I want your help. I want you guys to tell me, please, why are checklists important? So we know what they are. We know why we use them. We know the two types, but why are checklists important? Guys, help me out here. What do they reduce? I would say they reduce mistakes. They reduce operational mistakes. They ensure the correct configuration. They guarantee, ensure and guarantee are synonyms. They're the same thing, okay, Pablo? So they ensure efficiency. It means that we will only do things once because we have a checklist, and they improve, our favorite example, as you already know, they improve flight safety. So why are checklists important? Well, checklists are extremely important because we use them to change the aircraft's configuration. They are very important because they help pilots reduce mistakes, ensure the correct configuration, guarantee efficiency, and improve flight safety. Boof, level 6, I never have to do this again. Got it? That's it, guys. So I have examples, I have an explanation, I have a definition. There's nothing else for me to know. I don't need to know anything else for the test, okay? Easy? Hard? Now, let's start with the SOP. Is this class being recorded? It is, Lucas. I'm recording this class and I'll upload it to the platform later. By the way, if you're watching the recording and I'm just talking, I'm just saying some names here, I always record these classes live. I have a bunch of students. I have around 30 people today. And I have this interaction, because the goal here is not to be, my goal is never to create a podcast or a video or anything like that. That's not my aim. My goal is to teach, my goal is to help. So I always create these classes, I record them, I edit, and then I put them on Spotify or in the platform. And the full version will always be for my students in the platform, okay? And on Spotify, you have an edited version. On the in our platform, right, in preparatório.com, you will find the extra material, the questions, an article, and all the visual references I put here. All right. So yes, Lucas, the class has been recorded. Don't worry about the beginning. Possibly, I think in 4 days, maybe 3-4 days, you're gonna find it in the platform. Okay. So guys, we talked about checklists. We talked about the importance of checklists, normal and abnormal checklists, and now let's talk about something that, for me, this is the biggest difference between commercial and corporate aviation. Of course, there are some SOPs in corporate aviation, but normally if you're flying a small airplane, single pilot, people don't really use SOPs. But let's just understand what they are. For me, this is the thing that made aviation so safe, or as safe as it is nowadays. So today we have something called SOPs. It's not recent, but it's something basically mandatory today. And SOPs, they stand for Standard Operating Procedures. Basically, SOPs are operational manuals set out by companies for pilots to fly safely and consistently. I'm going to explain why this is important. They provide step-by-step instructions that show us how to operate and carry out tasks and procedures. That's it. Okay. So why are SOPs important? Imagine you're flying for an airline, you're flying for a big company, and you receive your roster, you receive your schedule, and you don't know who is your crew. You're a captain or you're a co-pilot. You don't know who is going to be the other pilot, who will be the flight attendants. However, every single employee, every single crew member will follow the same SOP. So when a problem happens, the captain knows what he or she will do, and the co-pilot as well. So SOPs basically they make all pilots follow the same procedures. In the SOP, we have the taxi speed, we have what we need to do, who handles what, who is responsible for what. So basically the SOPs are what makes us fly safely, especially because you're going to have a different crew every week, or sometimes even you have 3 different crews in the same week. So SOPs are extremely important because they help us fly consistently, all right? And they are used in normal and non-normal situations, right, guys? So SOPs are not checklists, okay? SOPs are the way we operate. Checklists, they are normally done by the manufacturer. Of course, the companies sometimes have some differences, but checklists are normally for the aircraft and SOPs are for the company, okay? Normally when you change companies, you're going to have a different SOP. When you fly in a different aircraft, you're going to have a different SOP, all right? So SOPs are created by the companies, by the operators. And I know for a fact that some executive pilots also have their own SOPs, and it's something that it just makes everything better. Everyone knows what to do and when to do it. So for me, SOPs are basically what makes aviation so efficient, right? Because efficiency is safety, safety is money, right? Is when we reduce the cost. So basically SOPs, they are responsible for all that. Done. Let's talk about how does it help. I briefly mentioned how does it help, but when pilots have a good training based on SOPs and they really understand the SOP, it means that they're gonna be consistent, the flights will be efficient, they will respect the regulations, avoid mistakes, and then it will contribute for flight safety. That's what I wanted you to know. I just wanted to point out this vocabulary. When you hear SOP, of course, I want you to know that it means standard operational procedures, standard operating procedures, whatever you prefer. And I want you to remember of training, consistency, efficiency, regulations, and mistakes. If you have all these 5, the bottom line will be flight safety. And that's what I want you to have in mind, okay? Right, so guys, checklists, normal, abnormal, SOPs, how do SOPs help, why are checklists important? Moving on, we have something for problems, which is basically our QRH. Be careful with the pronunciation, okay? QRH, and it stands for Quick Reference Handbook, okay? So when we have a QRH, we are talking about the Quick Reference Handbook. Basically, it's a book, it's literally a book that contains all the procedures for abnormal and emergency conditions in an easy to use format. It's basically a manual. It's basically something we need to do. So you get the QRH, you know what you have to do in case you have a problem on board. Each QRH procedure must be seen as a strategy to address a problem and minimize its operational impact in terms of affected systems or performance. So basically, this is a book of strategies. So if you can see the class, if you can actually see what I'm showing you guys here, we have a quick action index. What is that? Okay, this is item 7.1. Item 7.1 will be aborted engine start. Then we'll have an APU fire. These are the strategies I need to use. So basically, quick reference handbook will help us sort out problems, okay? And pilots must be very quick with this. They look, they analyze. We have tabs here. We know what is going on. We just find the page. We have our strategy, right? This is basically a short manual, I would say, but it's basically no, I like to say it's a strategy book. I'm not gonna change my words here. This is where you're gonna find your strategies in case of a problem, right? If you're flying a small aircraft, if you've never had this kind of experience, you might have never seen it, but the QRH is something that helps us understand. It's impossible for pilots to remember everything. We have some things that we call memory items, right? Sometimes we don't have, oh my God, look at this handwriting. I'm sorry, I just tried to write it down. So most times we don't have time to get a checklist when we have a problem. So for example, you have memory items. Let me give an example of a memory item. You have a depressurization. You're not gonna gather the checklist. You're not gonna get your QRH to remember to put on the oxygen masks. So we have memory items, all right? You have to reject a takeoff. You're not gonna get a checklist for that. You need to reduce the throttle, all right? So the initial actions we have, they are based on your airmanship. They are based on your aircraft and the problem. So some problems will have something we call memory items because we cannot learn how to fly in a book, right? So the book helps us. It gives us strategies. However, you guys are still in control of the airplane at all times, all right? So this is the QRH, this is the SOP, this is the checklist, and that's all you need, okay? I always mispronounce the reference. Yes, that's why I just highlighted it, reference, okay? I like to say in an easy to use format because this is an expression we have in English, okay? We can say, well, that is an easy to use method, okay? It's basically an expression we have, it's easy to use, okay? That's how we normally write it. It's an expression we have, okay? Now, this is the essence of the class. This is why I created this class. I just wanted to give you guys a little background, a little backstory here, because I don't like to jump straight into the topic without making sure everyone is on the same page. And that is a secret here. That's a secret to make people understand things, to make people really understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say. And when you are answering, it's also a great strategy. You don't jump into the content ever, because if you jump into the content, people are gonna feel lost because you have the content in your mind and you have the things that you're trying to say in your mind. So the content is what you need to say, but you always start with a context. Before the content, I provide context. Why am I talking about procedures now? Because I already showed you what is a checklist. I already showed you what is an SOP, what is a QRH. So we know where we find the procedures, we know what helps us understand the procedures, and now we can talk about procedures. So if I give a good context, people can understand anything. If I jump into the content, I won't understand. We cannot absorb that. Why am I telling you this? Sometimes you are looking for random content on the internet to study. You need a context for that. Everything's based on the context. We can learn anything if we have enough context before the content. And when you are answering, it's always good for you to also provide a context, because when you provide a context, you will understand better, people who are listening will follow you better, and everything will go smooth. What do I mean? Oh, Captain, what is a QRH? Well, today I'm a first officer. I'm flying for Delta Airlines, and I'm flying a 737. And a QRH for me is basically a strategy book in an easy to use format. And I use QRH to help my crew, to help myself whenever I have an abnormal situation during the flight. The QRH will give me solutions for the problem where I can reduce the operational impact of the emergency. Both level 6. You see, I started with a context, even if the context is stupid, even if the context is simple, even if it's obvious. I start with a context because I'm preparing my head and I'm preparing the examiner to listen to my answer. If I jump into the content, it's not a crime, it's not a problem, but it's going to be harder for me to remember. So if you start with a context, you know exactly what to do when the time comes. Okay? Now, let's talk about procedures, guys. And if you can take a picture of this class or anything and post it on our Instagram, it's gonna help me a lot. Just tag me there and I'll repost, okay? I always love seeing you guys study. I love seeing your setups. So let's go, guys. Talking about the main event of the evening, we're gonna talk about procedures, and this is one of the most common questions in the test. In the program, we have a class where I teach you guys about procedures, right? About how to talk about it. And basically, to start answering or talking about procedures, I need to remember the golden rule, right? If I have this in mind, I can talk about it. And this is the biggest problem. Normally, when we are answering a question, when we are doing something in the test, we are using a different level of knowledge, because as pilots, as I said in the beginning, we are trained to do things, we are trained to execute, and we are not trained to talk about it. So I need to learn how to make a good breakdown of what I do. This way I can explain better. And if I can explain better, of course, people are going to understand better and my score will be higher. So procedures are a big problem because it's something that every one of you know, but you don't know how to talk about it. And I want to be completely honest. I want to be very transparent. I want to make this disclaimer before we start. And I'm not here to teach you how to execute things. I know it's stupid. I know all of you know this already, but it's the internet, right? So I gotta mention it. The procedures will be found in your checklists, in your SOPs, in your QRH. I am not telling you what to do in case you have a problem or in case you have something. I'm just sharing my experience. I'm sharing an easy way for you to remember and talk about this topic, okay? I want to make this disclaimer because I never know who these classes are going to reach, okay? So make sure you look for your procedures in your manuals, in your pilot's operating handbook, not in this class. I don't know what you fly, I don't know how good you are, and you don't know how good I am, so do not trust me, all right? So let's go, guys. Now we can start. So whenever I have something here, whenever I have a procedure, I have to remember these steps, because if I remember the rules, I remember the sequence. If I remember the sequence, I can talk about procedures, all right? So, what is the procedure for rejected takeoff? How would you handle a depressurization? What are the steps to go around? What do you need to do in case you have an engine fire during climb? These are all ICAO questions. And sometimes we know how to act, we don't know how to talk about it. So that's what we're gonna fix today. I'm gonna teach a good technique for that. Okay. So I can have a generic procedure. I can say that first thing I would control the aircraft. After that, I would choose a good place choose a good place to go or land. And then I would inform ATC about the problem and I would request assistance. This is basically the core of any emergency. And they do have this question in the test. They would say something like, hey, how do pilots handle in-flight emergencies? And that's pretty tricky, and that's actually horrible to ask because we are pilots, so we need to have information. How do pilots handle in-flight emergencies? Well, I don't know. Every emergency is different. Every scenario is different, but I can answer generically. So, how do pilots handle in-flight emergencies? Well, basically speaking, whenever we have an emergency, we need to first control the aircraft. After that, we need to identify the problem and find a solution. We normally work the appropriate checklist. I can find the steps in the QRH. And last but not least, I will inform ATC about the problem and land in the nearest suitable airport or in an open area and request assistance on my position. Because the question, how do pilots handle in-flight emergencies, does not have a specific answer because it's a generic question. So for a generic question, I will always provide a generic answer. All right, are we on the same page? I gave you another context, let's go. Guys, we have 3 steps here. First, we're gonna aviate, then we're gonna navigate, and then we're gonna communicate. So, aviate, what is aviate? Every time we have a problem, our main priority is to maintain control of the aircraft. It doesn't matter if you have a checklist, if you have everything sorted out, if the controller knows you're in an emergency, but you do not have your airplane under control. So your first obligation is to fly the aircraft. So our main priority is to maintain the control of the aircraft. In an emergency situation, it is critical that the pilot keeps the aircraft flying and under control at all times. What does this mean? The airplane needs to be in the altitude I want it to be, or at least I need to know the altitude we are. I need to understand and decide our heading. I need to set up the good glide speed or the best speed for that problem, and I need to ensure my separation. All right, separation from terrain, from obstacles, from aircraft, from anything that could harm my flight. So first thing, I'm gonna aviate. Basically, we have that I have controls, you have controls. One will have normally the captain will have controls and the co-pilot will handle communication. Right after that, the airplane is under control. I'm gonna navigate. And what is navigate? I'm basically going to decide where I need to go to. I cannot stop mid-air, right? So I'm gonna navigate. This means that I need to navigate to a safe location, and we must have a clear understanding of the aircraft's location and the available options for a safe landing or diversion. What does this mean? Now I'm gonna choose my course, so my route. I'm going to change my altitude, and I'm going to watch out for the terrain and analyze my distances. Okay, so first I fly the aircraft, altitude, heading, speed, okay. Am I away from obstacles? Yes. Now where am I going? Okay, before I decide where I'm going, I need to understand where I am. So now I'm going to choose the best course. I'm going to select my altitude. I'm going to change my altitude, and I'm going to maintain my awareness or mindfulness regarding the terrain, and I'm going to judge and analyze my distance. We know the Hudson River case. Basically, Captain Sully did this perfectly. He knew exactly where he was, and he knew exactly where he needed to go to. And even though they tried to prove him wrong, in the end of the day, he knew that the distance was not allowing him because his altitude was not enough. So basically, that situation was solved because he navigated very well. All right. Right after that, we have communication. And I'm going to be very honest, I put this into 3 separate steps, but this normally happens at the same time. Okay, we're not going to do one thing after the other. If you have 2 pilots, one pilot will be communicating while the other one is flying. We have pilot flying and monitoring. We saw this last class, I believe. And finally, just to maintain the logic of the class, we're going to say that this is the last step. So finally, we will need to communicate with air traffic control, emergency services, or relevant parties. Effective communication is critical in emergency situations as it allows air traffic controls and other parties to provide assistance and support. What do I need to know when I start a communication? I need to know where I am. I need to know the problem I have. I need to know what I want. If not, the controller is going to start giving me suggestions, and that might make me lose time. And I need to have my information. I need to have the number of people on board, the number of souls on board, and the fuel, so they know for how long I can fly or what do I need to do there. All right. So I have an emergency, I need to have this information at all times. Because if I start my communication with this information, I help the controller and I optimize the time. Because now they know what I want. They don't have to give me useless suggestions. And I'm calling that useless because the controller doesn't know exactly what you want. So they'll just give you all the suggestions they find, all the smart solutions they can think of. If you already know what you want, he's going to start his second stage, which is going to be coordinate with all the necessary support and assistance, and of course clear the area for you. So basically, this is how we make a perfect communication when we are under distress. All right, guys, so now we know the logic. Now we have another context. We know we need to fly the airplane, we need to know where we're going, we need to know who we talk to. Now we can make this breakdown. So let's go. This is the moment for you to start taking notes, okay, if you haven't already. So this is the moment for you to start organizing yourself, for you to start understanding, because this is where the golden ticket is at. We're going to make a breakdown of, I'm not going to say all, but I'm going to say the majority of the procedures you can find in your test. So we're going to start from the ground. What is the procedure to reject a takeoff? I don't know, because I always do that at the same time. I always do that at the same moment. So what do I want you guys to have whenever people ask you about a procedure? I want you to break the procedure into 4 or 5 steps. Okay. Oh, but there are 1 million steps. Let's break it into 5. Oh, but there are 2 steps. Break it into 5. Be a little redundant. Be a little more detailed in what you're saying. So I'm gonna try to blaze through this. So what is the procedure to reject a takeoff? Well, today I'm flying Gulfstream G700. You see, I'm starting with a context. I'm just buying myself time. So what is the procedure to reject a takeoff? Well, today I'm flying a commercial aircraft. So to reject a takeoff, I need to first reduce my thrust to idle. After that, I will apply the necessary brakes. Then I will maintain control of the aircraft and stop completely. And finally, I'm going to contact ATC, stating my problem and my intentions. That's all. Booth level 6. So sometimes a very simple answer can make me save my entire test. It will help me show proficiency. And this is not only for your ICAO test. This can be used in an interview or in a simulator or in a check ride or anything like that. Because whenever I know what I need to do and whenever I show people I know what I need to do, my reputation increases. I get more credibility. So we need to learn how to break down the steps. And you see something interesting here. I'm not caught up in the details. You see, I just put apply brakes. But what if I have an auto brake? Well, if I have an auto brake, I'm going to use this expression. I'm going to wait for my auto brakes to kick in. Kick in is when an automated system acts. We saw that in the automation class, right? So procedure to reject a takeoff. Well, first I'm going to reduce my throttle to idle. After that, I'm going to apply the brakes. Then I'm going to maintain control of the aircraft and stop it completely. Finally, I'm going to inform ATC about the problem and request assistance or instructions. One is down, 1 million to go. Now, what would you do if you suffered a tail strike during rotation? It depends a lot on how hard I hit or what happens, but generically speaking, I would control my airplane. Then I would continue the climb and contact ATC. After that, I would request a position to hold and finally evaluate my intentions. That's it. You see, I always make a breakdown of each part of each moment, because if I do this correctly, if I do this well in the test, I am able to explain what I'm doing, explain what I need, explain what I want, and if I connect these points very well, I'm just being very assertive, okay? So the connectors will help my fluency. The context will help my structure, and the procedure itself will help my vocabulary. So this is what I do. This is how I answer a question. I start by repeating the question to show the examiner I understood what he or she asked. After that, I give them a context to set up my answer. Then I connect my sentences and I give them a detailed breakthrough. That's what I do. All right. So we've already seen rejected takeoff. We've already seen tail strike. And let's imagine we had an engine failure. So what are the steps in case you have an engine failure? Well, this will depend in the moment of the flight. However, I would first control my aircraft. After that, I would identify the affected engine. Then I would attempt to restart. If unable, I would cut off the engines. And finally, I would inform ATC about the problem, declare an emergency, and land in the nearest suitable airport with emergency services on the ground. You see, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. And whenever I am answering a question regarding a procedure, and I'm a pilot, I'm doing this all day. So whenever I'm answering a question about a procedure, I'm not thinking about English. I'm not thinking about what I saw in the class. I'm imagining myself in that situation. So I'm using the muscle memory I already have from being a pilot into the answer. I just learned, and I want you to learn how to make this perfect breakdown. The procedures doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to be detailed here. It's not a check ride. I'm not showing them I know what I'm doing. I'm just showing the examiners that I can talk about that. And if I know how to connect, and if I give them a good sequence, I'm golden. I got a 6. All right. So guys, send me a go ahead, a continue. Is it easy? Too much? Too fast? How's everything? Easy?
Chitero, uma
Yes.
pergunta.
Manda.
Ali no caso da tail strike, eu poderia usar uma resposta genérica, ainda que fosse errado o procedimento, por exemplo, eu rejeitaria a decolagem em caso de tail strike. Estaria errado o procedimento, porque eu não rejeitaria a decolagem, mas para fins da prova eu poderia dizer, para facilitar e ter uma resposta coringa para tudo?
Well, yes, in one way, in one sense, yes. But it's very obvious to understand or to see people who are using generic answers, all right? So you're not going to find one answer that will facilitate everything. You need to talk to the examiner. You need to do the test. Or else, for example, I can have a generic story and I'm going to talk about that all the time, and I'm going to do this all the time. So 2 points here. Your question was very smart. I'm going to have to explain that better. So basically, I have 2 points. In the test, they will not evaluate the operational aspect. They don't care if you're a good or bad pilot. That's not what is being considered there. However, you need to answer what was asked, and your answer needs to be related to the question. For example, what you told me here. Okay, but what if I tell them I'm gonna reject the takeoff during a tail strike? We know that operationally that's incorrect, but I can say that I can be a bad pilot as long as I maintain my logic. So, for example, what would you do if you suffered a tail strike during rotation? Well, if I had a tail strike during rotation, check, I would reject the takeoff. So I would cut off the power, I would control the airplane over the runway, I would apply full brakes and inform ATC about the problem. I can do that. And what is the secret? What is the best way for me to do this? I need to copy the question. If I copy the question, I show them I understood. And now I need to use the logic, all right? So for example, what would you do if you had a tail strike during rotation? Well, I would reject a takeoff by. That can be, they can understand this strategy. They can see that you're not answering what they asked. Okay, so in the end, I'm gonna teach you how to answer this generically. To sum up everything I said, you can have one standard answer for everything. However, you need to have some differentiation. You need to show them that you're answering that. And this needs to be done very intelligently in the test, all right? You can use a technique. you can use some generic terms, but you have to answer what was asked. Okay, so for example, I'm gonna use control the airplane for everything because that's my main obligation. My main obligation is to always control the airplane, right? So if my main obligation is to control the airplane, I know that I can start with that. So what would you do if you suffered a whatever? Well, if I suffered a whatever, I would control the airplane. After that, I would identify the problem and work the checklist. Then I would make my decision and inform ATC about my problem and my intentions. That's it. You see, I was very generic here, but I'm answering what they asked. You have to establish this communication and the context before. All right? We're going to talk a little bit more about this later. So guys, engine failure. Now, next procedure, depressurization. So how would you handle a depressurization during our flight? I'm going to start with a context. I will always start with a context. So let's imagine, how would you handle a depressurization during our flight? Well, this is a very serious problem and pilots must act very quickly. So in case of a depressurization, I would first don the oxygen masks. After that, I would start an emergency descent and I would establish communication. And I would inform ATC about my problem and my intentions. And finally, I would land in the nearest airport with fire and medical services on the ground. You see, I gave you the procedure, but I don't have to be so specific. Oh, I'm going to leave the airway at a 45-degree angle and then I don't have to make this breakdown so detailed, but I need to give them the steps, okay? So the more specific you are, the better your vocabulary, the more chances you get of a higher score. Easy?
Easy.
Nice, let's go. Now, let's talk about fire on board. So how would you deal with a fire on board? You see, I always start with a quick sentence or something that's going to give emphasis, that's going to show the examiner that I'm talking to them. Oh my God, I just had that idea. No, I'm using a technique, but they don't need to know that. So how would you deal with a fire on board? Oh my God, a fire on board is the most dangerous situation in my opinion. And if I had a fire on board during the flight, I would first identify the source of the fire. After that, deploy my extinguisher or tell my flight attendants to perform their procedures. Then I would assess the scenario and I would declare a mayday if necessary. And finally, I would land with fire and medical services upon arrival. You see, I know what I'm doing, but I'm not in a rush. I am talking a little bit about that. I'm talking to the examiner. I'm showing them that I'm present. I'm not using a rehearsed speech all the time. I'm basically spontaneously interacting with them. All right? It's very smart for you guys to do this, especially if you have a technique. Because imagine this. How would you deal with a fire on board? A fire on board, first identify the problem. After that, deploy the extinguisher. Then assess the scenario. After that, declare a mayday and finally land. That's a very bad answer. All right, we need to show them that we can speak. You need to be calm. And how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to practice more, and we're going to talk about this later. After I finish the recording, I'm going to show you guys a little secret. Okay, moving on. What would you do if you lost communication? So what should you do if you lose communication? Well, many things can be done, and this will depend on the flight rules, where I am, what I'm flying. But generically speaking, I would change the equipment or frequency to see if that solves the problem. If not, I would continue blind transmission, and then I would squawk 7600 and follow the filed flight plan. Finally, I would land at the appropriate time and wait for the light signal from the tower. That's it. I would wait for my green light. All right? One more. What would you do, or how would you handle a jammed landing gear? What is jammed, guys? It's stuck. So how would you handle a jammed landing gear? Well, depends on what happened, depending on what caused this. But generically speaking, I would first control the airplane. After that, I would request a position to hold. and work my checklist. Then I would use a backup system, and finally, if needed, I would request a runway preparation for a belly landing. You see what I did here? I gave them all the necessary details and I showed them that I had enough resources for that. Okay, this can help you a lot in the test. Okay, this is based, all these answers are basically a level 6. You can tone it down, you can reduce, you can trim it to make it easier for you. All right, and now let's talk about GPS failure. What would you do if your GPS failed during the flight? Well, this is not a serious problem in my opinion, because I would first use the standby equipment, my raw data. After that, I would adjust my route. If I were in a GPS airway, for example, I would adjust my route and change the current procedure. Then I would inform ATC, and finally I would just resume my flight, change the procedures. I think this is a very easy situation to solve. You see, I just toned it down. I'm not giving emphasis anymore. I'm saying that it's easy. And this way of answering will shape everything. This is how we conduct the tests in the way we prefer. All right? One more, guys. Evacuation. What are the steps to command an evacuation? So an evacuation is very dangerous, but it can be done correctly. If I first assess the problem, then I would choose the appropriate sides or doors and make a speech to my passengers, tell my flight attendants to proceed to their assigned positions. Last but not least, I would inform ATC about the problem and request assistance. That's all. However, let's imagine this is all a lie. I'm flying a Cessna 152. Well, my drawings are amazing. I know you guys missed this. I'm flying a Cessna 152. I don't have flight attendants. So what are the steps to command an evacuation? I start with a context. Well, today I'm flying a Cessna 152. It's a small and simple airplane. So to start an emergency evacuation, I would first turn off the battery. After that, cut off the power. Then I would open the doors and walk away. That's a procedure. I don't have to imagine a scenario I don't live. I don't have to imagine a scenario I don't use. I can imagine my scenario and I can be simple. This procedure is not better than this procedure. This aircraft is not going to give me a higher score than this aircraft. So if I learn how to dominate the procedures of my airplane, bring it. You can ask whatever you want. Okay? These are the little details I want you guys to have. And what is the secret for procedures? Connectors, guys. If I know how to establish a sequence, if I know how to use the right connectors, I know how to break it down. All right? All the connectors will be the same. I can say first, after that, then, and finally. I'm breaking into 5 steps. I can say first, after that, then, finally. I'm breaking down into 4 steps. I do not recommend you to break down into less than 4 steps, or else it's just going to be pretty vague and they might ask you just many questions. All right? So guys, today we talked about checklists, normal and abnormal situations, SOP, QRH, procedures, how to handle emergencies, and we made a pretty good, in my opinion, a pretty detailed step-by-step in many situations. I'm just going to shut off the recording and then I'm going to stay here with you guys live answering questions. Okay, so if you're watching the recording, thank you a lot for your time. Contact me if you need any kind of help with your ICAO needs, if you need help with your preparation, if you don't have a lot of time to prepare, if your English is very basic, if your English is advanced, contact me. All right, you can find me on Instagram. There you will find my number. You can shoot me a message. I'm sure we have a solution for you. So thank you a lot for your time. I'm going to stay here and give these guys extra tips. All right, so thank you.